Welcome to Wicked Felina. I'm Felina. I'm sure if you follow the conservative right-wing blogs, you will know about the detention of Brittany, Pettibone, and Martin Sellner, her boyfriend, as well as the banning of Lauren Southern. Now, when did this happen? When did this start? The craziness in England, when did it start? Oh, I used to have family over in England. And the Muslim influx it's been for a long time. Let's see, longer than I've lived. Let's just say that. And I remember my aunt used to tell me about how many of them that there were. And Prince Charles had a particular fascination with the Quran because he has this, he feels it's his mission to keep the wild places of the world. And his father too, who wants to come back as some kind of plague and kill off most of the world. He didn't put it as nicely as Charles. He wants to keep the wild places wild. Who that family owns, by the way, the Queen alone owns 12% of the world's surface, of the land surface, of the best real estate in the world. And he's got more, and the rest of them have more. And so they've got a lot of the world's surface, as far as I'm concerned, that they can keep wild. But he has a particular affinity for the Quran. He says he's read it, and that in it talks about nature. And that's why he likes it. And he also, with the Saudi prince, contributed to the Muslim Center in London. So he's kind of helping the Muslims along. And I think if you are aware of the arms trade between this huge arms trade between the royal family sells arms to Saudi Arabia, and of course at the royal weddings you always invite the Saudi royal family, and they give marvelous gifts, and also the royal family from other Muslim countries. And so there's probably sensitivity to Islam, that you don't want to offend these countries that they have such good relationships with. And I think Parliament is probably sensitive to that. They know that the royal family is close, and so they kind of watch their P's and Q's. But there's also another thing at hand. Every time that there's, something happens, terrorist attack of some kind, we always hear it's never about the victims first. It's kind of like bury the victims, move on, chin chin. It's a saying they say in England, chin chin. And we don't want a backlash on the Muslim community. And it seems to me that the left is the one that always kind of pounces on this. And what I've observed, having dated a communist revolutionary, I noticed, because he was in New York City when 9/11 happened, and he was forever marred by that. Even though he wasn't in the vicinity, it kind of affected him like as if he actually saw it or was in the building. And I went to speak of Islam because I know an awful lot about Islam. I was told that I was a hater and a racist. And I realized that when you look in his eyes, and you observe the left. You know how the left, Freud called it transference. The left, I think the left is more afraid of Islam than the right, because the left has a habit of painting the right with the same brush, whereas the right, Republicans, it's about the individual. It's about representing the minority. And democracy, Democrats, it's about the majority. So they're more inclined for communism. And communism, socialism, paints everybody with the same brush. You've got your dictator on top, and you've got a government that owns everything and keeps taking things. And you don't own anything, you're just a cell in the state, which is more cousin to Nazism, because Nazism and communism also, the first thing they do is they take the guns away. And so the state has the guns. The police have the guns. And they disarm the public, and so they kind of leave the public helpless to the state. So it's very different than the right. The right is actually very different. So painting Martin as Brittany Pettibone's boyfriend as a Nazi, though some claim that he was a neo-Nazi, I can't quite find if he was one and then he converted, I don't know. But Nazism is more akin to communism, the left. It really is, when you actually know what the two are about. So I wouldn't exactly paint him as that. Brittany came over to London to go to Speaker's Corner, which I'm very well aware of. It's an interesting place where Jay Smith speaks there an awful lot, and he's an expert on Islam. And in fact, he knows more about Islam than Muslims who come to argue with him. He says, get out your Quran, and he says, get surah, verse, something or other, and it says right there, and he really knows his stuff. And he speaks at Speaker's Corner all the time. And that's where Brittany was going. She was going to speak to Tony Robinson. She's going to interview him at Speaker's Corner. He is also an expert. Now, according to this article right here, it's when Nazis aligned with Muslim extremists, and it didn't end well for anyone. I'm going to link this up. So it's kind of interesting. See, the Nazis, with the help of an Arab cleric, used Islamic extremists as a tool. Didn't end well for anyone. So the idea is that the Nazis, they felt they were the super race, and they felt they were better than everybody, which is absolutely true. But in Islam, Allah told them that they are the greatest of people, and that Christians and Jews are the worst of creatures. So you've got it. You've kind of got that. It's not only in one place. Let's just say it's white supremacists, Nazis. You're going to find that in a lot of places. So where is the evil? I mean, who's the most evil? So right here, you've got the two. You've got the Nazis aligned with this particular cleric, Islamic cleric, and because they both, Muhammad Amin al-Husani, called for the Arabs to kill the Jews wherever you find them. And they knew they had found an ally in their terrible ideology. Okay, so Hitler believed the Muslims could be manipulated into being a powerful tool for the Nazis. For the most part, he was wrong, and the majority of Muslims fought against Germany. However, a significant number a whole division, or radicalized through a partnership with virulently anti-Semitic Islamic extremists. But so, if Martin Sellner was a Nazi, it's quite possible he might actually like Muslims. So you really can't paint everybody with the same brush, because you've got this whole division here of Muslims that fought with Hitler. Because if you read the Quran, you'll find that there's a lot in there that they kind of see. The Jews and the Christians, if you're a pagan, you were killed. If you didn't convert, you were killed immediately. But if you're Christian or Jewish, you had the option, according to Muhammad, blessings and peace be upon him, you could become a dhimmi, and a dhimmi is a slave, and you had to give 60% of your wages to Muslims. And if you didn't pay, then they would kill you. So I guess with, Adolf Hitler knowing about this, he knew that there was probably a group of Muslims that he could work with. And so he apparently did. You see, you're painting. See, there's a difference between Republican and Democrat, right and left. See, the Republic, the right, sees people as individuals. So if an individual in a group does something wrong, you punish that individual. You don't say, well, if the entire group is bad, like all whites are bad, all Muslims are bad, all Muslims are good. You don't do that. It's the individual. And it's the left that really has the tendency of painting everyone with the same brush. See, it's really them. That's why they say the backlash on the Muslim community. Well, why would there be a backlash on the Muslim community? That would be ridiculous. That's like saying, okay, somebody who did something bad, they stole something, and they were wearing white. Okay, arrest everybody who wears white. That's insane. Who would think like that? So why does the left need to tell us this all the time? Every time that there's an attack, it's a catastrophic attack. People are blown up and there's all sorts of blood and gore. It's just horrible. Is it that the left are really more afraid of the Muslims, they don't want to admit this, than the right is? That it's their great fear of them. It's kind of like what Freud said, transference. Is it possible that they're trying to tell themselves over and over again, tell themselves out loud, you can't blame all of them. Don't do it. Don't do a backlash and all. They're so afraid that maybe they're so afraid that if they see a Muslim, they might do something. They feel they have this need to say it. See, there's psychology behind the fact that they're doing this. And it sounds to me like they're more afraid of Muslims than the right is. Because I take people as individuals. I have Muslim friends that the second I met them, they didn't have to say anything to me. I knew that they were good and that they were generous, and I didn't need to fear them. So it's really interesting. And if you listen to Brittany Pettibone, she is extremely sweet and eloquent and peaceful and calm. And there's nothing in her that's violence. She doesn't speak of hatred in any way. I wouldn't listen to her if I heard one thing. And her boyfriend seems very handsome. She seems like a very nice man. I don't know him personally, if he was a neo-Nazi and maybe he's seen the light. I really don't know. I can't find if that is true or if that isn't true. But if he is a right-winger, let's say, and he adheres to the Republican ideology, then he sees people as individuals. Now, there's Lauren Southern. Lauren Southern, she's Jewish, and her family died in a concentration camp. So she's not a white supremacist. That would be crazy. I find her to be intelligent, strong, and compassionate. And of course, there's Ben Shapiro. They call him a white supremacist. How can that possibly be? Just like Lauren Southern, the KKK and the Nazis, two groups that they hated, aside from Black people and certain other ethnicities. They hated the Jews. They hated the Jews. So it's kind of impossible for a practicing Orthodox Jew to be a white supremacist. He's the victim of the Nazis. His family is the victim of the KKK and Lauren Southern. So that's ridiculous. And the fact that they're friends with Martin Sellner and Brittany Pettibone, I don't think if he was a neo-Nazi, I don't think any of them would be friends with each other. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. Now, I think that the government of England, see, this is what happened. And it happened about 10 years ago, 2008. And the problem is the legacy media, the MSM, and any there's an alt media out there. And I suppose I'm a part of that alt media. Now I am. I didn't have any equipment back then. But there was a gentleman I used to listen to every night. And he was filled with so much passion and anger because he knew history. Those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it. Who guards the guardians, he would say. He saw what was coming. He even laid out the entire Obama administration. He knew exactly what was going to happen. Amazing. And I started listening to him. I had a feeling I could see the signs, what was happening to this world. Things were getting worse. And I listened to him every night. And he didn't make me afraid, and he didn't make me hate anyone. In fact, because he was so filled with so much passion, and that people were listening to him, and he was so intelligent, and he made my mind think. In fact, I ended up, my brain was able to absorb so much information. I learned a great deal, and I wrote a screenplay. It was way too long, though. It was like as long as War and Peace. That's what he did to my brain. It's amazing. And I would fall asleep when I listened to him. Why? Because when you see things are happening in the world that are frightening, and you see things are sliding downhill, if there's a voice out there, a voice crying in the wilderness, no, if there was a voice out there that people were listening to and was intelligent and had the answer, I didn't need to be afraid. I would relax and fall asleep because someone really cared. Someone was doing something. It isn't that I wanted to fall asleep. I wanted to hear everything he said. It's just that he took the fear away. If he was saying it, I hoped, in my heart, that the right people were hearing it. He was a medical botanist. He went to the rainforest and the Fiji Islands, and he used to gather rare plants that were about to become extinct. And he has plants in the Kew Gardens in London. And he's an anthropologist and an epidemiologist. How about that? 2 master's degrees and a PhD. Very intelligent. And then he decided to become a talk show host. He's written about 35 books and was a pioneer in, I'm telling you all this so you kind of know just how amazing this guy really is. A pioneer in health, in nutrition, and all those books in the 70s, everybody started getting into. He was a pioneer in all that. But he was brilliant on politics. And he could see what was happening to Europe. And he was sounding the alarm. And that's what happened. He sounded the alarm. And it's funny because after his show ended, Coast to Coast would come on. And George Honore and his wonderful, relaxing voice that, of course, he never argues with anyone. He's just all nice with everyone. And that's when I would wake up, and then I would have insomnia. I could not sleep for the rest of the night. This guy he's nice. Nobody's hearing the alarm. Well, in 2008, something happened. In England, they made a list of 16 people, and they consisted of terrorists, Islamic terrorists, and neo-Nazis. And the one person who wasn't an Islamic terrorist or a neo-Nazis who actually killed Jewish children on buses. And this man is Jewish himself. He's the son of Russian immigrants. Very poor, came out of poverty, and educated himself. I mean, he went to college and worked his way through college. He was put on this list with terrorists, blew up things and killed people, and neo-Nazis, killed Jewish children. Why was he, a radio talk show host, who talked about politics and nutrition and history, and he taught me all about World War II and Greeks and the Romans and just history of the world. He and food, all sorts of subjects. He was put on this list by Jackie Smith, Home Secretary Jackie Smith. And I'll read you the article that came out in 2008. And since then, this man has been fighting the best attorneys, because he was the first one that was banned in Britain 10 years ago. See, this is when they decided to do this. It's been going on for a long time. And the mainstream media, legacy media, they didn't really talk about it. Nobody fought. His own government, his own representatives, nobody fought. They all know who he is. Believe me, if he was violent, I wouldn't be listening to him. I'd be quite afraid. And he only brought me peace. He's like a grandfather to me. Talk radio host Michael Savage is considering legal action against Britain's top Homeland Security official after she released today a list grouping him with terrorists and neo-Nazi murderers banned from entry because the government believes their views might provoke violence. In a telephone interview, Savage said he is still waiting to hear back from attorneys, but he noted Britain has very strict anti-defamation laws. Here's your problem for Brittany and Lauren and Martin. Home Secretary Jackie Smith said she decided to publicize the list of 16 people banned since October to show the type of behavior Britain will not tolerate, according to UK news reports. Savage's immediate reaction upon hearing the news was typically wry. Darn, and I was planning a trip to England for their superior cuisine and their exquisite dental work. Then it sank in. She said, "This is the kind of behavior we won't tolerate." She's linking me with mass murderers who were in prison for killing Jewish children on buses. For my speech, the country where the Magna Carta was created. Smith explained to Britain GMTV that she believed it was important that people understand the sorts of values and sorts of standards that we have here. The fact that it is a privilege to come and sort out things that mean you won't be welcome in this country. Coming to this country is a privilege, she said. If you can live by the rules that we live by, the standards and values that we live by, we should exclude you from the country. Jackie Smith, the secretary, explained to Britain's GMTV that she believed it was important the people understand the sorts of values and sorts of standards that we have here. The fact that it's a privilege to come here and the sort of things that mean you won't be welcome in this country. Coming to this country is a privilege, she said. If you can't live by the rules that we live by, the standards and the values that we live by, we should exclude you from this country. And what's more, now we will make public those people that we've decided to exclude. Savage said he wants top First Amendment attorneys to represent him in a major international case. I want to sue the British Home Secretary for defamation, for linking me up with murderers because, in my opinion, my writings, my speaking, none of which have advocated any kind of violence, ever. Savage said the last time he was in Britain was about 20 years ago, and he had no immediate plans to return. In an interview with the BBC, Smith said Savage, the number 3 radio host in the US at the time, is someone who has fallen into the category of fomenting hatred of such extreme views and expressing them in such a way that is actually likely to cause inter-community tension or even violence if that person were allowed in the country. What a joke. Savage said his message for Smith and the people of the UK is shame on you. Shame that you've fallen to such a low level. It's interesting to me that here I am, a talk show host who does not advocate violence, who advocates patriotic traditional values, borders, language, and culture. That's why Trump loves him. Who is now on a list banned in England, Savage said. What does that say about the government of England? It says more about them than it says about me. The UK list also includes Hamas leaders, Ku Klux Klan grand wizards, and neo-Nazi, and a radical American pastor and his daughter. Smith said the British government believes the people on the list have views or attitudes that could provoke violence. Well, maybe those people, but I assure you, I wouldn't have slept so peacefully listening to his voice. If people have so clearly overstepped the mark in terms of the way, not just that they are talking, but the sort of attitudes that they are expressing, to the extent that we think that this is likely to cause or to have the potential to cause violence or inter-community tension in this country, then actually I think the right thing is to not let them into the country in the first place, not to open the stable door, then try to close it later. It's a privilege to come to this country. There are certain behaviors that mean you forfeit that privilege. The others on the list are Jewish nationalist Mike Rozovsky, imprisoned Russian skinhead leaders Artur Rhino and Pavel Skachevsky, and Islamic leaders, and several Islamic terrorists. Said Savage, how can a nation put me on a list and leave hate preachers in England who say they're going to kill you? We're going to convert all of you to Islam. How is it possible that those hate preachers can't be deported from Britain, but I can be banned from Britain? People that advocate actual murder cannot be deported from Britain. That liberalism has gotten so cowardly. I dedicate this to Brittany, Lauren, and Martin, and most of all, Michael Savage. Let's stand up and speak out and demand that the nation of the Magna Carta allow them to enter. One little kiss from my heart to all of you. Goodbye.